Hey guys, welcome to another Iceberg. Today I'll be going over a frequently requested Iceberg, the Gears of War Iceberg. Now I've been a pretty big fan of Gears of War since I want to say 2016, so I've always intended to do a Gears Iceberg at some point, but I don't know, for some reason I just didn't make one until now. But here we are. And like with the Halo Iceberg, I need to clarify something. This is going to be primarily about the games. I'll mention some EU stuff, but I haven't read any of the comics or novels yet, so keep that in mind while watching this. Also, I need to give a huge shout out to Reddit user Battlestar Kiwi. I don't know how they were able to DM me through Reddit, because I'm pretty sure that I disabled DMs from other people on Reddit, but I'm happy they did because they gave me some really interesting topics about Gears of War, some of which there's no way I would have been able to discover myself. So big shout out to them. Thanks a ton. I also didn't even ask for these topics, they just kept sending me them. But anyways, let's get on with the video. Whoa! The Carmine family. The Carmine family is legendary in the Gears fanbase for being a bit of a meme. You see, in the original Gears of War, there's a guy named Anthony Carmine who was quickly killed off after 1 or 2 levels fighting alongside him. For some reason, maybe because of his voice or the way he dies, he became very popular in the fanbase, much to the confusion of Epic. And so when Gears of War 2 came around, they introduced his brother into the game, Benjamin, who would die around the midpoint of the game. And with Benjamin's death, it became a running gag to introduce a member of the Carmine family and then kill them off. The Carmine family would continue into Gears of War 3, but there was a fan vote on whether or not this Carmine would die. Fans would vote for him to live, and so Clayton Carmine was the first and only Carmine introduced in the games to live, though Epic would release a non-canon joke death scene for him a few months after the game's release. After Gears of War 3, there was some talk about introducing a Carmine in Gears of War Judgment, but this was scrapped, and so the next Carmine, Gary, was introduced in Gears of War 4 as a background character who dies. Then, in Gears 5, we were introduced to Elizabeth Carmine, aka Lizzie, and she, like her uncles before her, died. The popularity of the Carmine family has led to many different memes, and has led to many of the Carmines appearing as multiplayer skins in Gears games set after their deaths. There's also some other Carmine families we know about, like Will Carmine and Fredo Carmine. Will was a soldier like the others, but Fredo wasn't. Instead, he was just a war reporter. So to wrap this entry up, here's all the Carmines we know of. Anthony, Benjamin, who's the best one by the way, Clayton, Will, Gary, Fredo, Elizabeth, and there's at least one more we don't know the name of that had to be Lizzie's father. Lambent Chicken. In the Gears of War 3 level, Abandoned Ship, you can find 4 tubes. If you walk up to each tube, your character will eventually call out, "Hello." Once you say hello into each of the 4 tubes, a chicken will pop out of one of the tubes, and if you shoot at it, it will eventually transform into a giant lambent chicken. This mini-boss's main attack is shooting fire out of its beak. Though be careful while doing this Easter egg, if you kill the chicken too quickly, it won't become the lambent chicken, so you will have to restart the checkpoint. Road to Ruin. The Dark Corners map pack was a DLC released for Gears of War 2. And it's most well known for featuring a scrapped level of the game called Road to Ruin. This scrapped level takes place right after Maria's death, and has Marcus and Dom either storm the Nexus, or sneak into the Nexus by disguising themselves as Theron guards. It's a pretty fun level, though since it was originally scrapped from the game, it's not actually canon. The most interesting thing about this scrapped level is that Franklin, Dom's stranded friend from the first game, returns in this level, and after rescuing him, he fights alongside you for a bit, before eventually making his way to the surface. Marcus Phoenix in Judgment. While Marcus Phoenix doesn't actually appear physically in Gears of War Judgment, outside of being a multiplayer/horde skin, he's heard very briefly in the game's campaign. At the very beginning of the level, Museum Square rooftops, you can hear Marcus over the comms asking for evac.
"We can't hold them up forever, Control. We need that evac."
"We're working on it, Sergeant."
"We've got wounded, Control. Why don't you send Loomis's Raven for us?"
"Colonel Loomis is preparing to lead the assault on the museum, Sergeant."
Yeah, tell him good luck with that.
Gears of War costed Microsoft $1 billion. According to, at the time, Epic Studios Vice President Mark Rain, the original Gears of War is the sole reason why the Xbox 360 has 512 megabytes of RAM. Apparently, Microsoft really wanted another Halo-like flagship series, and so Microsoft spent $1 billion to increase the 360's RAM from 256 megabytes to 512 megabytes. Fortnite. In December 2021, Marcus Phoenix and Kate Diaz were added to Fortnite. There were also several weapon skins, and a new glider based on the sled used in Gears 5. And finally, there was also spray paint of a Locust added as well. It honestly blows my mind where there's a game out there where Marcus Phoenix, Goku, John Wick, Cammy, Dude from Free Guy, Darth Vader, Catwoman, Thanos, a Xenomorph, Venom, Sarah Connor, Nathan Drake, Bruno Mars, Master Chief Ariana Grande, Michonne, Batman, Robocop, Indiana Jones, Naruto, Superman, Ezio, a Demigorgon, Mike Lowray, Kratos, Chun-Li, Rick, Predator, Din Djarin, Deadpool, Rey, Lara Croft, Chani, Rick Grimes, Jill Valentine, Zavala, John Cena, Jinx, Aloy, Harley Quinn, Mistborn, Bulma, and Travis Scott can fight each other to the death. Wait, who the hell is Mistborn? Aftermath. This is probably the most obscure Gears of War campaign out there. Gears of War Judgment is already a controversial game in the Gears fanbase, so people tend to forget that game's story. But it seems that everybody forgets that Gears of War Judgment also had a separate small campaign titled Aftermath, which takes place during the events of Gears of War 3, and tells the story of how Baird, Cole, and Clayton found reinforcements to assault Azara. This leads them to meet up with Paddock, and it's eventually revealed that Loomis and Sophia died in between the events of Gears Judgment and the original trilogy. Well, okay, Loomis is confirmed dead, but technically Sophia hasn't been confirmed to be dead? But I mean, like, come on, let's be real here, she's probably dead. It's a pretty interesting little side story, though I kinda feel bad for Clayton during this campaign. Cole, Baird, and Paddock are all talking about the past, while this dude's just standing there like, guys, I have no idea what you're all talking about right now, I wasn't there for any of this. Coltrane loves slides. This is easily my favorite Easter egg in Gears of War. In the Gears of War 3 level, Homecoming, if you play as Cole, you can go to a slide in a playground, and it will give you an option to interact with it. If you do interact with it, a short cutscene will play of Cole sliding down the slide.
Target the pod! Whoa!
Sadly, this can only be done once. Cowboy Corpser. In Gears of War 2, on the level Rolling Thunder, if you find and shoot 3 cowboy hats at the beginning of the level, Dizzy will yell out a loud "Yeehaw!" and both Marcus and Dom will wear cowboy hats for the rest of the level. But what's even crazier is that during the level, a Corpser will emerge from the ground wearing a cowboy hat and shout "Yeehaw!" Most people will tell you that you'd only do this Easter egg on insane difficulty, but that's actually not true. You can actually do it on any other difficulty. You see, while the cowboy hats you're supposed to shoot are only visible on insane mode, they're still actually present in the same locations on other modes. You just can't see them. So if you know where the cowboy hats are, you can still shoot them, and you can do the Easter egg on any difficulty. Heavy Rocket Launcher. For some reason, it's really hard to discover cut content from Gears of War. But thankfully, we do know of some cut content, though most of it is through concept art and interviews. But not this one though. The Heavy Rocket Launcher was a cut weapon from Gears of War 3, found in an early build to the game. It's in a somewhat usable state, though it's clearly not finished. I mean, the pickup name for the weapon literally says, "Name goes here." It looks like a variation of the mortar, though its textures aren't actually finished, and its reload animation is bugged. But it still can fire rockets. The Buckethead. Originally, in the first Gears of War, there was going to be a mech-like vehicle like the Silverback from Gears 3, Judgment, and 5, and the Mechanical Loader from Gears 3 and 4. Known as the Buckethead, this giant was a twin-legged walker that carried around a huge heavy-caliber machine gun. It's unknown if it was actually holding the gun, or it was like built into the mech. It's also unknown if the player would actually be able to pilot it. It could have just been a vehicle for NPCs. But what we do know is that this mech never actually made it past the concept art stage. D-Day. The Gears of War Judgment level, Fortress, takes heavy influence from the real-world World War II operation known as D-Day. And by heavy influence, I mean it's literally just a Gears of War version of D-Day. You hop out of a transport boat and you have to storm a beach filled with craters, trenches, and barricades, while Locusts fire at you with heavy machine guns. But that's not all. A few levels later, in the level Beach, you recreate D-Day again, but this time, you're on the defensive, while Locusts storm the beach. Library's Ghost. The Gears of War Judgment map library is well known among Gears of War fans for its ghost Easter egg. Load up the map on free-for-all and look for a secret pathway through a bookshelf. You'll then come across a little gap in the ceiling. Throw 2 grenades into that hole, and the painting in front of you will fall to the ground with a little piece of paper. Shooting the paper will light up one of the points on the COG gear logo, where the painting once was. Now you have to go around the entire map looking for 7 more of these paintings, and shoot the little pieces of paper that spawn next to them. After doing that, return to the original painting, and now a ghost will emerge from the painting. Look around, and look at a book, before returning back into the painting. If you then shoot the painting, you'll be transported into a small catacomb-like area where you have to defeat the ghost. Doing so will return you back to the map. Though if you get killed by the ghost, you can hear the ghost say, "Free me." Free me. You don't really get anything though for killing the ghost, outside of the chance of getting a free Bushka and a single kill on the scoreboard. Comics. Gears of War has had several different comic series throughout the years. The original comic run had 24 issues and was published by Wildstorm, an imprint of DC Comics. This run had story arcs like Hollow, Baron, and Dirty Little Secrets, though it also had several one-shot stories like Harper's Story, One Day, and The Quickening. There were even 4 issues that delved into the Pendulum Wars, which I'll go into more detail about in a few minutes. This series ran bi-monthly from December 2008 to August 2012, and was written by Joshua Ortega. This series told the backstory of several different characters, along with introducing readers to new characters that fans begged to be in the games. Several of these characters were eventually added into the games, but I'll get to that in its own entry. After 2012 and the end of the main Gears comic, there wouldn't be a new comic series until 2018 with the release of the Rise of Rom miniseries, published by IDW and released from January 2018 to April 2018. As the name suggests, this was about Rom's backstory and where Will Carmine was introduced, only to die in classic Carmine fashion. This 4-part miniseries was written by Curtis J. Wiebe. Impressed with his work on the story, Curtis was brought back in 2019 to write a 5-issue miniseries titled Hivebusters that ran from May 2019 to March 2020, and told a story about the Hivebusters set after their campaign DLC, which wasn't out yet. Sadly, since the end of the miniseries, it's been pretty quiet in the world of Gears of War comics. Though with Gears of War 6 only being a matter of time, I'm sure the comics will return eventually. Though there was one more Gears of War comic, a one-shot released to tie in with the game, Gears Pop. E3 2018 was a crazy time to be a fan of Gears of War, with the announcement of not just Gears 5, but Gears Tactics as well. But there was also one more announcement, Gears Pop. Developed by Mediatonic and released for PC and iOS on August 22, 2019, Gears Pop was a Gears of War strategy game based on the soulless pop vinyl figures of Gears characters you can buy in real life. I really don't understand the appeal of these things. They don't look very good to me. Anyways, this game isn't actually playable anymore, being taken offline in April 2021. But when you could play the game, you were basically playing a Clash Royale clone with a cover system. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I'm sorry you can't play it anymore. The game received average to mediocre scores, and nobody really talked about it. Most people seem to agree that it was a fairly lame iOS spin-off game, but overall, nobody really talked about it. Though I guess when Diablo Immortal, Command & Conquer Rivals, and XCOM Legends exist, I guess Gears Pop isn't exactly so bad. Keep in mind though, I've never actually played any of these iOS games, so I'm just going off the general reception I see online. If you enjoy any of those games, don't take offense to this, please. Comic characters in games. While not super common, occasionally, Gears of War comic characters will make the leap into the games, though not usually in any of the game's plotlines, as of right now that is. Usually they'll be playable characters in multiplayer or Horde. Some examples include Sirach, who's in Gears 4 and 5, Alexandra Brand, who's in Judgment, Jermad, who was in Gears 5, and Michael Barrick, who was in Gears 3 and 5, and is the only one who actually has an appearance in a game's story mode. Granted, it was a DLC campaign, but still, that's pretty significant. Aaron Griffin. Aaron Griffin was a supporting character in Gears of War 3. Despite only appearing in the first 3 levels of Act 4, he was pretty memorable, being voiced by Ice-T. However, what's arguably the most memorable thing about Aaron Griffin is the fact that in his final appearance, he says that he and Marcus will finish their dispute another time, suggesting that he'd appear again at some point as maybe a minor antagonist or as a supporting character again in a future game. This never happened though. In fact, outside of appearing as a multiplayer skin for Gears of War 4 and Gears of War Ultimate Edition, he wasn't seen in any piece of Gears of War media for a decade. That was until 2021, when he finally made his return in the novel Ephro Rising, a novel that explored the immediate aftermath of the Locust War. In this novel, it's revealed that Aaron Griffin became a member of the Council of Ministers, though I'm pretty sure he doesn't actually finish his dispute with Marcus in the novel, but I could be wrong about that. I haven't read it. Regardless, Aaron Griffin finally was able to return to the franchise after a decade. Though since it took a decade for him to return, I guess it's safe to say that we'll see him finish his dispute with Marcus in 2031 in Gears of War 9. Dom's Toms. In the Gears of War 4 level, Geared Up, there's a secret weapon only found in this level, these being Dom's Toms. The only way to get this Easter egg weapon is to destroy every single potted plant in the greenhouse. Though this will really tick off Marcus.
Alone, I've worked in the house alone. You know what it's like being a hermit? Fixing a house? There's no Home Depot out here, you tomatoes. They my tomatoes up! God add that to the list. God damn it! Those are Doms, for Christ's sakes. I grew those from Dom seeds. Those are Dom's goddamn seeds, for Christ's sakes. I'm never gonna have a good sauce again. I can't make Dom sauce. You guys. This bullshit. Damon Baird, you're a
Sorry I had to censor the F words there. YouTube would get mad if I didn't. Anyways, after that, 6 grenades will spawn in a tomato plant. These are Dom's Toms. Standard grenades, but they detonate with tomato juice flying everywhere. COG Red Shirts. Throughout the mainline Gears of War games, it's very common for COG members to be named after the color red, as a reference to the concept of red shirts. You know, background characters that usually die or get injured in place of a named character. The origin of this stems from the original Star Trek series. Anyways, for example, Rojas, which is red in Spanish. I thought it was Rojo, but apparently it's both? Alright. Guels is similar to the word ghouls, which is a term used in heraldry to refer to red. Akeiji, which stands for Red Castle in Japanese, Seguino, which stands for blood, and even the name Carmine, which is a general term for deep red colors. The Cluck Shot. The Cluck Shot is probably the most well-known Easter egg weapon in Gears of War. It made its first appearance in Gears of War 3 in 2 different parts of the campaign. The first in the level Anchored, and the last in the level Hang 'em High, after doing Easter egg steps in the previous 2 levels, like finding a pirate chicken and making ammo crates fall off the map. Doing so will make a pirate chicken fly up on a spaceship made of ammo crates and drop 4 Cluck Shots in that level. So what exactly is the Cluck Shot? Well, it's basically just a boom shot that fires explosive chickens. The weapon would make its return in Gears of War 4 during its Thanksgiving event titled Thanksgiving, and in Gears 5 in the same event, but this time it was actually given a unique skin that could be unlocked permanently. Though in Gears 5 it doesn't actually fire chickens, so there was a bit of a trade-off there. There's also the Cluck Shot's sister weapon, the Track Shot, which is only in the Gears of War 4 level, the Raid. It's a DB version of the boom shot that fires trackers at targets, dealing the same amount of damage as a shot grenade. This weapon is also way easier to get, as all you gotta do is interact with a computer and then walk over to a desk and it'll just be like laying there. Marcus Snowman. In the Gears 5 level, The Tide Turns, you can find a small photograph in the dressing room that has a family posing next to a snowman that looks suspiciously like Marcus Phoenix. Though honestly, the more I look at it, the more I'm reminded of the Michael Keaton Jack Frost film. The Pendulum Wars. The Pendulum Wars were a series of global wars that lasted for 79 years between the two superpowers, the COG and the UIR. The war started over control of the natural resource Emulsion on Sera. Sera being the planet that Gears of War takes place on. For 79 years, the two superpowers clashed in a deadlocked war with millions upon millions of lives being lost, and the planet being devastated by weapons. The war only came to an end when the COG were able to steal the Hammer of Dawn and rained hellfire on the UIR. Because of how long the war lasted, even during the Locust War, there was still aggression between the two factions. This can mostly be seen in Gears of War Judgment, with Paddock being a former member of the UIR, and I can only assume this aggression continued into the Swarm War. I can't really explain most of the Pendulum Wars here, because I have like 100 more topics to cover, and it's such a massive topic that you could make several hour-long videos on the subject, so I'll wrap up this entry with 2 more facts. The first being that the war ended only 6 weeks before the beginning of the Locust War, meaning that there was only 6 weeks of peace between the two most destructive wars in the Gears universe. And finally, you can actually play a bit of the Pendulum Wars in the prologue of Gears of War 4, where you fight alongside Dom during the COG raid to get access to the Hammer of Dawn. Honestly, after Gears of War 6, I'm totally down for an entire trilogy of prequel games set during the Pendulum Wars. Johnny COG Gear. In April 2020, a special skin for the COG Gear multiplayer character, designed by Johnny Quad, was added into the store, but could only be purchased with real-world money. At first, this may sound pretty terrible, but in actuality, this skin, named Johnny, was a skin created to support Gamers Outreach, a charity organization to raise funds for children's hospitals. And so, all the money players spent on buying the skin would go to support children's hospitals. Gears 5 Map Builder. In April 2022, Coalition announced that the map builder feature in Gears 5 was going to be removed from the game so that the team could work on other projects. To the people who used this feature, this was pretty upsetting. But for many others, including myself, they were shocked to learn there was a map builder in Gears 5. Yes, Gears 5, from launch to April 2022, had a map builder feature for nearly 3 years. But it wasn't very popular, as the mode was filled with bugs. The mode was also made just for escape mode, which, while a mode with its fair share of fans, was easily the least played mode in a Gears 5's options. At least for most people. I don't really play Gears multiplayer, so I played Escape far more than I played Versus, but that's just me. Also, the mode just wasn't updated. The enemies that appeared in later Escape maps were never actually added to the map builder, so DBs, shock drones, all of the Locust enemies, and all the Lambent enemies weren't ever available. And worst of all, you couldn't get any Tour of Duty or XP for playing custom maps. So yeah, Map Builder allowed you to create your own hive with its own layout and enemy placement, but you couldn't really, progress in the Tour of Duty while playing these. This mode also featured several different achievements, and so when the mode was eventually removed, all of these achievements were given out for free to every player. Overall, the Map Builder was a really cool idea that just was completely ignored by Coalition. Relic Weapons. In Gears 5, Coalition added a new type of collectibles called the Relic Weapons. These weapons are unique variations of base game weapons and have their own unique metal engraved skin. These can be found all across Gears 5's campaign. Some of these relic weapons include the Enforcer Relic, which deals a ton more damage but fires much slower than the standard Enforcer, the Boltok Relic, which allows for better hipfire, the Boomshot Relic, which allows for you to fire 3 grenades before having to reload, the Torque Bow Relic, which fires non-explosive bolts, the Dropshot Relic, which fires cryo-freeze rounds, the Marxa Relic, which turns the weapon into a full auto assault rifle, the Snub Relic, which turns the Snub Pistol into a 2-shot machine pistol, and the Retro Lance Relic, which fires explosive rounds. Surprisingly, there was no Scorcher Relic in the Hivebusters campaign DLC, even though that would have made, total sense for it to be there. Also, I'm pretty sure that all of these relic weapons count as non-canon Easter egg weapons. I don't think any of these are actually canon. Toast. This is probably the most famous Gears of War Easter egg of all time. In the Gears of War 2 level, The Best Laid Plans, you can come across a toaster. Interacting with it will cause it to start toasting bread, and seemingly burn it. The toast will then pop out, and Marcus and Dom will say,
Who Who wants toast?
I like them crispy.
I like them crispy on the outside.
Hell yeah!
Though that's only on insane difficulty. You can do this Easter egg on any difficulty, but each difficulty adds a sentence to the scene. I know this is a non-canon joke Easter egg, but I really like the idea of the Locust having their own brand of toasters.
Here we go, ladies. Incoming. Bring it.
That was beautiful, baby.
Oh, yeah.
That was beautiful, baby.
Sweet.
Follow Mary girl, follow Mary girl. Hell yeah!
Boom, baby, boom, baby, boom.
That was beautiful, baby. Yeah! That was beautiful, baby.
Nice.
Everyone's excited about the Go Commando Daily Giveaway. Pre-order Gears of War 3 for a chance to win epic daily prizes from GameStop. Power to the players! Rated M for mature.
Mount Gearsmore. In the Gears of War 4 multiplayer map, Glory, there's 6 different books scattered around the map. If you shoot all 6 of these books in a certain order, a 7th book will spawn. Shooting that book will trigger an alarm, and you'll have to race over to where the 4th book is to interact with a button that's spawned in. If you do this correctly, the button will cause a giant cannon to fire at a nearby mountain. After the smoke is cleared, you'll see Mount Gearsmore, a parody of Mount Rushmore with the faces of Anya, Anthony Carmine, Dom, and Kim instead of 4 US presidents. Firestarter Benjamin Origins. In Gears 5, there's a skin for Benjamin Carmine called the Firestarter. It's a pretty cool skin, but it seems kinda random. Why of all characters did he get a skin based on a Gears of War version of a firefighter? Well, this is actually a reference to a piece of cut content from Gears of War 2. You might have noticed in Gears of War 2 that when you come across the Scorcher of the New Hope facility, Marcus and Dom will mention how Benjamin would have loved the Scorcher because of his love for fire. That probably confused you, as there was never a point in the game where Benjamin mentioned his love for fire. This line of dialogue is referring to a cut scene from the tutorial part of the game, where after blowing up the garage with a grenade, Benjamin would talk about how he used to play with fire as a kid. And so, the Firestarter skin was meant as a neat little callback to this obscure cut content. Retro Sawed-Off. Here's a trivia question. What's the most obscure weapon in Gears of War that you can use? Not including Easter egg weapons. You might say one of the Gears of War Judgment exclusive weapons, like the Bushka or the Tripwire crossbow. Well, the answer, at least I think, is the Retro Sawed-Off Shotgun, aka the Elite Sawed-Off Shotgun. Only appearing in the campaign DLC for Gears of War 3, ROM Shadow, it's only available to use if you're the 4th player, as that's the player who plays as the Theron Guard during the ROM sections of the DLC. And this Theron Guard is the only character in Gears of War history that's ever used this weapon. Like the name suggests, this is simply a variant of the sawed-off shotgun from Gears of War 3 and Judgment. It deals pretty much the same amount of damage, however it has 2 massive bayonets, which allow players to bayonet charge into opponents, like the Retro Lancer. The Retro Sawed-Off also features a unique execution. Well, the bayonet charge execution is unique. You blast the enemy in half after impaling them. As for like the normal execution, sadly it just reuses the standard sawed-offs. Female Dom. Originally, in Gears of War 1, players were going to be given the ability to choose the gender of Dom before playing the game, with the female Dom's name being Dominique. This was scrapped due to the fact that it would require Epic Games to create 2 different scripts for the game, hire another voice actor, and record a ton of new lines for Dom, Marcus, Baird, Cole, and Anya. This would have taken up too much resources, so they just went with Dom being a man. Secret Weapon Supply. In the Gears of War 3 level, Ashes to Ashes, you'll come across the petrified remains of hundreds of people. Pretty disturbing, right? Well, you can destroy them. A bit morbid, but you can. However, it's recommended that you don't actually do this, as if you don't destroy any of them, you'll gain a bit of respect from Aaron Griffin and his people. So when you arrive at his tower, one of his people will open up a door to a secret stash of weapons for you to pick up, including some boom shots and torque bows. Imagine if the archaeologists that first discovered the ruins of Pompeii, saw the petrified remains of the people who died there, and just decided to, run through them and destroy them. Crossover characters. In Gears 5, there were several crossover and guest characters added into Horde mode and multiplayer. Hell, even campaign to an extent. As I mentioned in the Halo Iceberg, both Kat and Emil from Halo Reach were included in the game, as were Sarah Connor and the T-800 Terminator from the Terminator franchise. Weird there was never a young Sarah Connor from Judgment Day skin in the game, but I guess they wanted to focus on Dark Fate. Grace and the Rev 9 from Dark Fate were also included, though they had to be purchased for $20, which means that Grace and the Rev 9 are arguably some of the rarest characters in that game, because I can't see many people rolling to the Xbox store going, I gotta get that Grace skin. The New Day from WWE were also added into Gears of War 5. Austin Creed, Kofi Kingston, and Big E. Also, Dave Bautista was added into Gears of War 5 as a skin for Marcus Phoenix. This was because Dave Bautista usually got fan casted as Marcus Phoenix for a potential Gears of War film, something that Dave Bautista has also shown interest in. There was even an update to Gears 5 that allowed for Bautista's skin to be used in the Gears 5 campaign. He even recorded all of Marcus's dialogue for the game, so it's pretty crazy. Thanks for playing. In the Gears 5 level, Shot in the Dark, if you have Dave, the robot companion that's with you in this level, use the Pulse ability while overlooking a lake, you can see the message, "Thanks for playing, TC." This is very clearly just Team Coalition showing their thanks to the players. Gears Crunch. In the Gears of War 1 level, Trainwreck, it's possible for the Berserker to destroy a bunch of boxes. If she does this, you can head over to where the boxes were, and you'll find several boxes of Gears Crunch cereal. Obviously, this is a non-canon joke Easter egg, but I'm going to pretend like it's canon, because the idea of the COG creating their own cereal as propaganda is really funny to me. Also, in the Gears of War 3 level, Homecoming, you can find various pieces of Thrashy's cereal promoting the game Thrashball. Also, if you interact with the Coltrane promo cutout a bunch of times, Cole's rant from Gears of War 2 will begin to play. Cole's hat. So this is like a super quick one. So right next to that Cole cutout I just talked about, there's a hat. And if you're playing as Cole, you can actually pick it up and wear it. Once picking it up, Cole will mention how it's a cool hat, and that's it. You wear it for the rest of the level. Master Boomer. Mike Kime, a character artist for Epic Games, released concept art for Gears of War 3 and ArtStation, revealing a cut enemy from the game named the Master Boomer. There were 3 different pieces of concept art created for it. One having a rhino-like horn and having I think, they're not zippers, but they look like zippers on his body. And 2 other pieces of concept art that give the Boomer a whip-like weapon and have the Master Boomer carrying around wretches that are hooked up to it through some tubes. Basically, it's a super Boomer that maybe had a ramming attack with its horn, or would have sent out super wretches to fight. That last part is entirely speculation on my part, as there's not really much we know about them. While the Master Boomers wouldn't make it into the final game, they would eventually evolve into the Savage Boomers, which did end up making it into the game. Baird and Cole switch up. Another real quick one. Originally, best friends Baird and Cole were going to have each other's roles. So originally, Cole was going to be the more serious and sarcastic one, while Baird was going to be the former sports star. Not much else but that, really. But I'm happy that they didn't end up going that route, because, Baird and Cole are just too iconic. Marcus Phoenix Collection. In June 2022, it was reported by very reliable insiders that the Gears of War series would be getting a Master Chief Collection style treatment, and that it was currently in development. However, since then, other reliable insiders have come out and said that it's not true. That maybe one day it could happen, but as of right now, there's nothing being worked on. So there's a bunch of conflicting reports from reliable leakers and insiders. So really at this point, it could go either way. But let's say it does happen. What would be included in the collection? Would it just be the first 4 games, like how the Master Chief Collection launched? Would Judgment be included in this? How about Rom Shadow and the Road to Ruin DLC campaigns? Would they include the original Gears of War 1, Ultimate Edition, or both? How would multiplayer and Horde be handled? Would Gears 3's Beast Mode be included? How about Judgment's Overrun Mode? Would Gears of War 2 and 3 get remastered or remade? Only way to find out, I guess, is to wait and see if this collection is real. Novels. Like with Halo, Gears of War has had several different novels, taking place between various games in the series, or even set before all the games. Some of these books are set during the Locust War, the Pendulum Wars, and the Swarm War. There's been several different writers. Karen Travis, who wrote the first 5 novels, Jason M. Huff, who wrote the 6th and 7th novels, and finally Michael A. Stackpole, who wrote the 8th novel. There's also the novel Kilo Squad: The Survivor's Log, which was written by Rob Outten, and is an in-universe novel written by Baird. Originally, the novel series was supposed to just be a trilogy of books, but due to the positive reception of these novels and the popularity of the Gears franchise, the novel series continued on. Death Row Laugh. In the Gears of War 3 multiplayer map, The Slab, from the Phoenix Rising DLC, you can move a thrash ball around the map. If you kick the thrash ball into a hole near the death row fence, a rat will run out of the hole, and a locust will begin to laugh. But that's not all. There's another Easter egg on the slab that happens after you do the death row laugh. If you follow the wretch footprints on the floor, you'll eventually come to a door, and when you shoot at the door, you'll hear somebody groaning behind it. Some also claim that there's actually more to this Easter egg that is yet to be discovered, while others just say that this Easter egg is simply a reference to when you encounter boomers for the first time in the original Gears of War. Regardless, it's a pretty creepy Easter egg. Despicable You. In the Gears of War 4 level, Remembrance, or Prologue, whichever one you like calling it, if you play the level on Insanity and rush over to a closing door towards the beginning of the level, you'll find a weapon called Despicable You. It looks exactly like a repair tool painted white, though unlike a repair tool, it'll actually take up one of your primary weapon slots. This weapon has 12 shots and fires ice balls that turn into ice clouds, and if an enemy is caught inside the cloud, they'll freeze to death. This weapon is actually a reference to the film Despicable Me, referencing the freeze gun Gru uses in the opening of the film. Of all the movies to reference in Gears of War, that's the one they went with. Gears of War 2 Jace. So many people believe that Jace made his video game debut in Gears of War 3. However, that's not actually true. Jace appears very briefly in Gears of War 2 in the background, though just because he appears in the background doesn't mean that he's not voiced. In the level Scattered, you can briefly see and hear Jace leading a team of Gears while assaulting the Hollow.
This is Corporal Stratton of Alpha 7. We're in the Hollow.
Jace, this is Delta. Good to have you here. Good luck out there.
You too, Marcus. Thanks. Stratton out.
I have no idea which of these Gears is meant to be Jace. I guess that's like up to your own headcanon. What's even more interesting about this appearance is that Jace here is voiced by Nolan North, who most likely only did his voice since he was such a minor cameo. And when Gears of War 3 came around, the rapper Drake was going to voice him, but due to scheduling conflicts, he couldn't. And so Jace was voiced by Michael B. Jordan. And then in ROM Shadow, Jace was voiced by Justin Shaw. So basically, Jace was given a new voice actor for every one of his in-game appearances. Wait a second, is the reason why Jace wasn't a playable character in Gears 4 and 5's multiplayers because Michael B. Jordan was too busy to record lines? I'm not even saying that's true, I'm literally just like speculating, like this isn't even in the script. Locust Tremor. So what do you think is the most obscure Locust variant in the Gears of War games? Not the comics, I know there's like exclusive variants in the comics. My answer has to be the Tremor, as they're exclusive to ROM Shadow, much like the retro Sawed-Off. The Tremor is a variant of the Boomer that carries around a Tremor Hammer, an enormous hammer that when smashed into the ground, alerts Cedars to ink out the sky for the Krill to swarm. I assume they can also use the hammers as weapons, because, I mean, look at these things. They're 8 feet tall and serve as support for the Locust Army, and that's pretty much it, actually. They haven't been seen in a game, comic, or novel since that DLC. Though originally the Tremor was going to be playable in Judgment's Overrun mode, where they would use their hammers as weapons. They could even cover their hammer in fire to make it even more powerful. But since this was cut from the game, it's not actually canon. Original voices. When Gears of War was first announced in 2005, the first trailer release for the game was very strange. Not only does it have this kid who's not in the game talking about how nightmares are real, But when the trailer finally cuts to Marcus, Dom, and Anthony Carmine, of all characters, sitting and talking, Marcus isn't voiced by John DiMaggio, but instead Steve Bloom of Spike Spiegel, Tank Dempsey, Wolverine, Starscream, and Grunt fame. Anthony Carmine also has a different voice actor, but I can't figure out who it is. What's more interesting though about Anthony here is that in this trailer, he's actually wearing the exact same armor as Marcus, just with a COG helmet.
That fairy tale stuff always scares the crap out of me.
Most urban legends are based on fact.
Tell me about it.
Armored Ticker. At Comic-Con 2012, Epic Games released concept art for a scrapped enemy for Gears of War 3. That being the Armored Ticker. This little guy would have been the armored counterpart to the Ticker. They were created due to Epic being concerned that the Tickers were too easy to fight. The only way for these guys to be taken out would have been to wait until they popped out of their armor for a second and then shoot them. Or to just let them explode and dodge the explosion. Their main gimmick outside of being armored was the fact that they could also roll into balls and roll around at, well, slow speeds. They weren't very fast. There would even be parts of Gears of War 3 where there'd be pressure plates, and if you stepped on them, armored tickers would be thrown at the player. These guys actually made it into a proof of concept video, but never actually ended up making it into the final game. Mainly because Epic Games felt they were too gimmicky. Hamilton. In the Gears 5 level, The Tide Turns, you can find several different posters for a musical titled Embry, a musical based on the character Nazar Embry, the founder of the COG. Jace would also star in this musical as Embry. This entire musical is a direct reference or parody of the real-world musical Hamilton, which premiered in 2015. Dom's Ghost. In the Gears of War 4 level, Night Terrors, if you play on the level on Insanity, you'll find 4 gravestones scattered around the graveyard. These gravestones will have letters on them that spell out Maria. If you shoot or destroy the gravestones in the order they spell Maria, a thick layer of fog will cover the map, and all the enemies on the map will die. Following this, 2 ghosts will appear on each end of the graveyard. These are the spirits of Maria and Dom. They'll then recreate Maria's death scene from Gears of War 2, with the audio from that scene even playing, before disappearing and leaving behind a family photo of Dom and Maria. Next to this family photo is a special Easter egg weapon named the Memento Mori. It's a ghostly, almost invisible bolt-action pistol that's always an insta-kill to any type of enemy. You only have 18 bullets in it though, and you can't refill the ammo. This weapon is a reference to how Dom uses a bolt-action to put Maria out of her misery. Which, now that I think about it, Dom could have used his Lancer, or snapped her neck or used a knife or something. He didn't have to use the bolt-action. I mean, that thing is literally going to blow her head up. Not the wisest way of putting her out of her misery. That's going to be really traumatizing for you. Even more so than, the act itself. Ticker Fighting Ring. In the Gears of War 3 level, Trench Run, if you take out all the Locusts in the pet shop area, and then head to the right of where you entered, you'll find a drawing of a red ticker on the wall. Next to it is a door that you can't open, but you can look through. Looking through that door will reveal an underground ticker fighting ring where Locusts are betting on 2 wild tickers fighting each other to the death. However, this only happens when playing by yourself. When playing co-op, instead of an underground ticker fighting arena, you'll see savage grenaders working on an assembly line for a few, until the furnace in front of them explodes, killing them all. Gears of War 2 Ultimate Edition. This is a rumored remake, or remaster, of Gears of War 2, much like Gears of War Ultimate Edition. I mean, it would only make sense that it happened, right? Gears of War 2 is often regarded as the best Gears of War game in terms of story, so you'd think they'd want to enhance the experience some more and make some more money. However, despite fans wanting this game to happen, there's very little, if any chance at all, that this game will actually ever happen. And this is for 2 reasons. The first being that it already exists. You see, in 2018, Gears of War 2 was given a 4K graphic enhancement by Microsoft and the Coalition on the Xbox One X. No, not the Xbox Series X, that's a completely different thing. God, Xbox titles are so confusing. But yeah, because of this, Gears of War 2 on the Xbox One X, and by extension the Series X and S, already is graphically enhanced. Sure, it's not exactly an Ultimate Edition, As with an Ultimate Edition, you'd expect edited cutscenes, very minor cut content restored or realized, and the multiplayer being rebalanced with new features. But if we're just talking about graphics, then it's already kind of been remastered or enhanced. And the second reason is that it's already been directly confirmed by the 2018 Coalition Community Manager that the Coalition has no interest in making a remaster of Gears 2. Ty's torture. So when playing Gears of War 2 for the first time, you might be confused as to why Ty, Avengers Endgame's himself. Sure, from a narrative perspective, it's made to make the players understand that the Locust are so insanely cruel that they're able to break Ty, a veteran of the Pendulum Wars. But when you think about it, Ty had to have been captured by the Locusts for maybe 2 hours tops? What could they have done to him that would break him that quickly? That's where the comics come in, because in the Gears of War comics, we actually see what they did to Ty, or at least a bit of it. You see, Ty was being processed, which is what the Locusts do to captured Gears and Stranded in order to break their prisoners. And there is a lot of stuff that happens while being processed. The Locust will torture the Gears and Stranded by using hooked whips, slave labor, starvation, dehydration, beatings, being locked in an Iron Maiden, dipped in vats of raw emulsion, being strung up by hooks, and even given lobotomies. I'd show you an image of Ty being processed for the comics, but that would get this video age restricted very quickly, so I'm not going to do that. Let's just say those 2 hours were the worst thing any person could ever go through. Side note, the processing was a statement on Guantanamo Bay. That's not a joke, it's not me putting my politics into the game. It was directly stated by people who worked on the game that that is what the processing was meant to represent. So, don't get mad at me in the comments for putting my politics in the video. The Gears of War movie. In March 2007, it was announced that New Line Cinema had purchased the rights to make a Gears of War film, with Stuart Beattie of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, 30 Days a Night, and Obi-Wan Kenobi fame, writing it. A few months later, in August, it was then reported that Len Wiseman of the Underworld franchise and that really awful Total Recall remake fame was set to direct the film. It was also reported around that time that Cliff Bleszinski, the lead designer of the original Gears of War trilogy, would be a consultant for the film. A year later, in 2008, it was then reported that the film would be a prequel to the games, and tell the story of how Marcus got his scar. A year later, in 2009, it was then stated at Comic-Con that Emergence Day, Dom, Marcus, and Jack would all appear in the film. Cliff Bleszinski also stated here that he would try to convince actress Kate Beckinsale to play Maria in the film. A year later, in 2010, it was then reported that the film's budget had been scaled back significantly, and the film would be getting a significant rewrite. That year, it also lost Wiseman as a director, and that was the last update we got until 2013, when it was announced that the project was being shopped elsewhere, and that Stuart Beattie would be directing the film. 3 years later, in 2016, the Coalition officially announced that the Gears of War film was back in development again, but this time at Universal Studios. This version of the film was also revealed not to be canon to the Gears games, novels, and comics. It would be set in its own continuity. Then, in 2018, it was revealed that F. Scott Fraser of XXX Return of Xander Cage, Collide, and the Number Station fame would be writing the film. And finally, in 2019, it was confirmed yet again that the Gears of War movie was in development. And that was quite literally the last update. The film is very clearly deep into development hell, and I honestly doubt we'll ever see it. Especially after the very mixed to poor reception of the Halo show. I doubt this is like a top priority for Microsoft. Carmine Family Life Insurance. Carmine Family Life Insurance is a skit created by G4 to promote Gears of War 3. In this skit, a member of the Carmine family, named Diedrich Carmine, arrives at a family life insurance company to set up some life insurance policy. But the insurance guy isn't having any of it, revealing that he's fully aware of the huge Carmine family and how they're almost always dying. He then goes on to list several other Carmine members who have died, like Jed Carmine, who was killed by a berserker while chasing a cat, Franklin Carmine, who was hit by a train, Sherman Carmine, who melted while looking for his car keys in emulsion, LeBron Carmine, who was killed after accidentally blowing up a gas station, Gareth Carmine, who was cut in half by lasers, and Ignatius Carmine, who was killed while playing torque bow tag. Dietrich Carmine also shows off a urine sample he brought to the meeting, only to then be killed by a stray sniper round. And before you ask, no, none of these Carmines are actually canon, though I kinda wish they were.
Yeah, and I think it's time to roll, baby!
Cover me, Cole!
Here's not the cold train!
Let's get him! Uh-oh.
Oh, my bad.
Can't wait to get in on the action? Get the Gears of War 3 beta when you pre-order Gears of War 3 for the Xbox 360, only at GameStop. Rated M for mature.
Buckethead Locust. In the Gears of War Judgment level, straight to the top, you'll find 3 different buckets with smiley faces drawn on them. One is on the head of a dead body, one is sitting next to a TV, and one is on the edge of a building. If you shoot all 3 of these buckets, once you reach the roof of the building you've been traveling through, every single Locust on the roof will have the same smiley faced bucket over their head. Not only that, but all the characters will have a reaction to this.
Oh, what the hell's going on here?
Easter eggs.
Shoot these fucking heads!
Don't bother with headshots.
Hoffman's Scrapped Death. Originally, in Gears of War 3, Hoffman was intended to die. Instead of Dizzy, Hoffman was meant to accompany Delta Squad to get the submarine, and he would have died as they sailed off. Not sure how though, I doubt they'd want to do a back-to-back sacrifice death, so maybe he was shot and would have bled out in the sub. Regardless, the old guy was gonna die. So why didn't he? Well, one of Gears of War 3's writers, Karen Travis, as I mentioned before, wrote some of the Gears of War novels. And she didn't want Hoffman to die, as she didn't want to lose him as a character in the books. So regardless if you like or dislike the Gears of War novels, be happy that they exist, because if they didn't, then Hoffman probably would have perished in Gears of War 3. Scrapped Beast Mode Locusts. In the Gears of War 3 mode, Beast Mode, which sadly is still a Gears 3 exclusive, there were 5 different Locust variants scrapped from the mode. The first we know of is the Grinder, as they were shown in very early beta footage. The same goes with the Grenadier Elite. The latter was probably scrapped because he would be far too similar to the Savage Grenadier. The Reavers were also supposed to be playable as well. However, they were scrapped because Epic Games were having trouble getting them to work in smaller maps and indoor maps. And the final Locust variant to be cut from the mode was the Armored Cantus. Well, okay, that's actually not true. They are in the game, you can play as them. But they were changed significantly, as in the beta footage for the game, they were shown using dual Boltocks, while in the final game, they used dual Gorgons. As for the last 2 scrapped Locusts, we have actually no idea what they could have been. If I had to guess, maybe a Beast Rider or a Theron Guard? Lost Planet 2. In the Xbox 360 version of Lost Planet 2, you can unlock both Marcus and Dom as playable characters. In order to unlock them, all you gotta do is beat the campaign. It's pretty cool that Marcus and Dom are in the game, however they're not the only guest characters in the game. Albert Wesker from Resident Evil, Frank West from Dead Rising, the Monster Hunter from, well, Monster Hunter, and the Hellgast from Killzone all make appearances. Though most of these are console exclusives, like the Marcus and Dom one. Wesker is the only one that's on both PS3 and Xbox 360, as Frank West was also an Xbox exclusive, while the Monster Hunter and Hellgast were PS3 exclusives. And before you ask, no, sadly, Marcus and Dom aren't actually voiced in Lost Planet 2. Sam in Gears 5. What many Gears fans don't know is that all the returning Gears Trilogy characters that appear at the end of Gears of War 4, Marcus, Cole, Baird, and Sam, actually appear in Gears 5's campaign. Now, Marcus, Baird, and Cole are no-brainers, but you're probably confused about Sam. Where was she in the campaign? Well, Sam appears at the very beginning of the game as the pilot of the helicopter dropping off Marcus, JD, Del, and Kate.
Sam, we're outgoing.
Roger that. We're standing by out here.
Take us home, Sam.
Got it, sweet cheeks.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. She doesn't even appear on screen. It's really weird. I'm gonna assume that she was originally going to be in more of the game, but was scrapped for unknown reasons. But this is all speculation, I could be completely wrong. Ukon's pet snake. In 2021, artist Manuel Augusto Borea released concept art for Gears Tactics on his ArtStation account. He had previously worked on the game before joining Blizzard. In that concept art, it was revealed that Ukon was originally going to have a tiny little pet snake, or pet worm, one of the two. As described by Manuel, Ukon's design was inspired by JRPG enemies and Saturday morning cartoon villains, with the snake worm pet thingy being part of the latter. Sadly, this little pet didn't actually make it into the final game, for unknown reasons. Construction Boomer. In Gears of War 2, players were introduced to the Butchers, a terrifying variant of the Boomers that wielded giant swords. However, players were also meant to be introduced to another variant of the Boomers in Gears of War 2, the Construction Boomer. The Construction Boomer was going to be a variant of the Butcher, so a variant of a variant, that carried around a large wrench instead of a giant sword. Ultimately, they weren't included in the final game. Sadly, there isn't actually an image of them out there, so here's an engineer zombie from Black Ops 1's Dead Ops Arcade. The closest thing I can think of to a possible Construction Boomer. Gears of War Tactics. Not to be confused with the game Gears Tactics that actually came out, Gears of War Tactics is a cancelled Gears of War game that was being developed exclusively for the Xbox Kinect. This game was apparently the last Gears of War title Epic Games worked on before their partnership with Microsoft ended. This game would have been an RTS, where you controlled 4 different characters. You'd draw paths for the characters to follow with your fingers, and could even call down Hammer of Dawn strikes. And that's pretty much all we know. The game was cancelled in early 2013, most likely due to the Kinect not really being as successful as Microsoft had wanted it to be. There were 2 minutes of footage leaked for the game, but since then that leaked video has been made private, so all we have now are screenshots. It is possible that this game was eventually revived and turned into Gears Tactics, but at the same time, they seem to be pretty different games, despite the very similar titles. Jonathan Harper and Clayton Carmine in Shadow of Rom. In Shadow of Rom, when playing as the COG, your team consists of Kim, Ty, Barrick, and Alicia. However, that wasn't the original idea for the campaign. The original idea for the campaign was that the team was going to consist of Barrick, Alicia, Jonathan Harper, and Clayton Carmine. Harper being a character from the Gears comics, much like Barrick. Sadly, it seems that Harper was scrapped pretty early on in the DLC's development. However, Clayton actually appears in very early promotional art for the game instead of Kim. He's actually wearing his recruit armor. Clayton was eventually replaced with Kim during development though, due to Epic Games believing that players would want to see Kim again if they were going to see Rom again. And Harper was replaced by Ty, due to Ty being a fan favorite. At least I think. You see, there was an email interview with a member of Epic Games in 2013 about the DLC, and they said that Harper was going to be in Kim's place, and that he was really the only change in the cast during development. But then the interviewer brings up the promotional image of Clayton, and the Epic Games employee just says, there may have been talks of a Carmine at some point. So if the original team was Ty, Barrick, Alicia, and Harper, why is Clayton in this image? My best guess is that after scrapping Harper, they probably went with Clayton as a quick alternative before quickly changing their minds and bringing in Kim. Also, before moving on, there's 2 things about Alicia that I want to mention. She was originally conceived as an Onyx Guard member, and in this interview, they actually tease a future story about Alicia's brother.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Hope. In the Gears of War 1 level, Campus Grinder, you can find the word Hope written out in a courtyard as a statue. If you shoot at the O, which is made of a cog symbol, it will eventually fall off the statue and land on the ground, killing the player if they're too close. Sawed-Off Chicken. In the Gears of War 3 level, Ashes to Ashes, if you play the level on Insanity, you'll come across a building with a broken window. If you look through the window, you'll barely be able to see a cog helmet. If you shoot at the cog helmet, there'll be a confetti explosion. And then if you go around the building, you'll find a door that you can kick down. Inside that room will be a Hammer of Dawn, in an arcade game that you'll need to kick a few times. Once you kick it a few times, you can now play the arcade game titled Sawed-Off Chickens, where you play as a chicken and fight off a horde of locusts with some sawed-off shotguns. However, you can only play it for like 5 seconds before it breaks down. Also, for some reason, only the player playing as Marcus can actually play the game, nobody else. Killer Instinct. In 2016, during the 3rd season of the Killer Instinct reboot, General Rom was added in as a guest fighter. Rom's design in the game is based on his redesign from Gears of War Ultimate Edition, though his design from the original game was available as a skin. There's also several different armors that Rom can wear in the game that change his design to look like one of the various Locust enemies in the Gears games, like a Theron Guard, a Beast Rider, a Royal Guard, and a Mauler. While he got a bunch of skins, he sadly didn't get his own stage, like other fighters in the game, but he did have his own theme. Also, very few, if any, new voice lines at all were recorded for the game. They mostly just reused audio from Gears of War and Ultimate Edition. Also, the Arbiter was in Killer Instinct as well, so you can actually do an Arbiter versus Rom fight, and that's pretty cool. Wretches using weapons. So you remember Ukon's pet snake that I mentioned earlier? Well, on that same post on ArtStation by Manuel, he revealed some concept art for Gears Tactics, which included wretches using weapons, something that we've actually never seen them doing before in any of the games. While a pretty cool idea, it's unknown if the wretches using weapons were actually ever seriously considered, as he describes this part as shooting crap at the wall to see what sticks. If they were considered, I guess they were probably removed for continuity reasons, as the Coalition probably didn't feel like coming up with an excuse as to why wretches never used weapons in Gears 1, 2, 3, and Judgment. Also in that same post, he shows off another cut enemy that had no name, but looks like a fatter boomer variant. Jace's Scrapped Death. Just like with Hoffman, Jace was originally going to die in Gears of War 3. But instead of dying in the middle or end of the game, Jace was going to die at the very beginning of the game, right at the end of Act 1, with him dying when the ship the CNV Sovereign blew up. This was changed for either two reasons. The first being that, unless you're a comic reader, Jace dying after like 3 levels of playing as him probably wouldn't be that super sad, or, what's more likely, is that Jace's role was expanded upon greatly in Gears of War 3 after Drake came on board to voice him. Gears of War Exile. Gears of War Exile was an on-rails shooter being developed by Epic Games that was first revealed through a trademark made by the company in January 2011. This game was being developed exclusively for the Xbox Kinect, though it wouldn't ever see the light of day, as it was cancelled in April 2012. Very little is known about this game, as no developer or employee of Epic or Microsoft has ever talked about this topic outside of Cliff Bleszinski, though he only ever said that he couldn't give information about it, and that it was cancelled. There was one screenshot leaked for the game, though. This screenshot apparently came from demo footage that was meant to be shown off at E3 2011 or the 2011 VGAs. We know that the game was supposed to be at both of those events, so the demo footage could be from either one of them. Finally, we know that the game, or at least the demo, was using a modified Gears of War 2 engine, and that the game would have taken place around the same time as Gears of War 2. Fish on a Stick. In the Gears 5 level, Shot in the Dark, if you shoot 4 different valves in the sewer duct, a large stick with an even larger, okay, not larger, but still pretty big, fish will descend from the heavens. You can then grab this stick and actually use it as a weapon. This fish on a stick, or known in game as Fish Stick, is basically a reskin of the Breaker Mace, though it reuses the pipe's UI image. This is probably one of the most bizarre Easter eggs in the entire franchise. Dancing Wretch. On the Gears of War 3 multiplayer map, Checkout, there's a fire alarm that if you pull, will do an Easter egg. or start an Easter egg. You see, after pulling that fire alarm, you'll then have to run over to the electronics area and pick up a fire extinguisher and a door that just opened. Then you gotta run over to the pharmacy and extinguish a fire that's on another fire alarm. You then gotta wait for a shopping cart to roll up and then shoot a red top hat in the cart, and then head over to the checkout area, where you then gotta shoot another red top hat in the window to the right to the checkout. And then you gotta extinguish a fire that just started up in a car, and then once you take care of that, then head to the bathroom and shoot a cane hanging from the ceiling. And then go back to the electronics center and extinguish a fire inside of a TV. And then go all the way back to the door where you got the fire extinguisher, and there you'll see a wretch wearing a red top hat and cane dancing before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Raging Buccaneer. In the Gears of War 4 level, Do Not Go Gentle, you can find a unique variant of the Gnasher called the Raging Buccaneer. At first glance, it seems like it's just a golden repaint of the standard Gnasher. However, every single time you fire it, the shotgun causes a slow-mo effect. In order to get this weapon, you need to find a skull. Once you shoot the skull, it will fall to the ground, and then you gotta push it all the way over to a closed gate. Once the skull touches that gate, it will then spawn the Raging Buccaneer behind the gate, and you'll now be able to open up the gate and claim your prize. Cancelled Marcus Phoenix Prologue DLC. So Gears of War 3 was originally going to have 3 different campaign DLCs, one of which we ended up getting, Shadow of Rom. But there's 2 others that were sadly scrapped. I'll talk about the other one in the 4th tier because there's almost no information about that one. The one we do know a bit of information about is the Marcus Phoenix Prequel DLC. This DLC would have told the story of Marcus abandoning his mission and going to save his father, which ultimately leads to him being thrown in prison and the events of the first Gears of War. There were 2 videos showcasing this DLC, which was still in very early development, but both of these videos were removed off YouTube, and sadly the videos were never actually saved by the Wayback Machine. We know that these DLCs were at one point in development because in earlier builds of the game, you could actually find this DLC and somewhat play it. Again, it's in a very early stage of development. You can tell this because of the one screenshot we have of this DLC in which Hoffman's missing his eyes. The last 3 things we know about this DLC are that a ton of voice work was done for this DLC. This DLC was going to be somewhat similar to Rom's Shadow in structure, and that parts of the DLC eventually were reworked into DLC maps. Friendly Reaver. In the Gears of War Judgment level, Dead End, if you shoot a Lambit just chilling on top of a crane in the distance with a long shot, a Reaver will spawn in and fly around the map and write the word "Hi" before blowing up.
Huh. You don't see that every day.
Tyro Station Easter Egg. On the Gears of War 2 multiplayer map, Tyro Station, there's a warning sign right above where the train will occasionally pass through the map. If you wait until the train passes and then shoot the warning sign down, it will trigger another train to pass through. This train, though, is special because Marcus Phoenix will be shown holding onto the smokestack of the train as it passes through. It's a pretty funny Easter egg, and surprisingly, it's not the only time a Gears character can be seen riding a train in multiplayer. Gridlock Mad World. On the Gears of War 3 multiplayer map, Gridlock, if somehow by some miracle, a round is completed without any player destroying any of the ash statues of people around the map, an instrumental version of the song Mad World will then play during the next round. This is a reference to a trailer for the original Gears of War that used this song, and Dom's death scene as Mad World plays there too. Gears of War on the PS3. So the Gears of War franchise is one of Microsoft's most popular and famous exclusives. Those are only available on PC and Xbox. It's not like they were on PlayStation, Microsoft's biggest competitor. Well, what if I told you that you can actually play Gears of War 3 right now on your PS3? You'd probably call me a liar, but it's true. Somewhat. In 2017, and more famously in 2020, leaked footage of a build of Gears of War 3 playing on a PS3 was released online. Epic Games would then confirm that this footage was legit, and was taken from Epic Games in 2011 during a data breach. So did Epic Games have the intention of releasing Gears of War 3 on the PS3? No. You see, Epic Games at the time were using the PlayStation 3 to test the Unreal Engine, with Epic Games even coming out and stating this about the leaked footage. Quote, "This footage is a byproduct of Epic's internal Unreal Engine 3 testing process, which utilized both Gears and Unreal Tournament, and was never part of any actual product work for the PlayStation 3. So, yeah, mystery solved. Except you're probably wondering why I said you can play Gears of War 3 on the PS3 right now. Well, in 2021, digital archivist PixelButts released the PS3 builds of Gears of War 3 to the Internet Archive, meaning that you can, hypothetically speaking of course, download it and, well, do what you gotta do to put it on a PS3. The only problem is, you also need a PS3 dev kit in order to do this, and even then, this build of Gears of War 3 is extremely buggy. Like really, it's unplayable at points. But yeah, you can play through the entirety of Gears of War 3 on the PS3. The Snake Skin. In Gears of War 4, there was a skin collection called the Snake Skin, and it was released on the store by accident. It was then taken away from the Gears 4 store, with the store now saying that the skin is an esports skin. The Coalition would also then go on to make a statement saying that this skin was released early by accident. So, the players that didn't get this skin while it was available had to wait until it was eventually released as an esports skin. One problem with that, though. This skin was never released again, and was replaced with the nuclear weapon skins. Why was this? Well, because of some controversy that stirred up in late 2017. On November 2nd, 2017, the official Coalition Twitter account released a statement about the snake skin, saying, quote, "We were made aware that our snake skin weapon set bared a resemblance to a weapon skin mock-up designed by community member and artist Jeter, or Jeter. The Coalition designed snake skin set based on a written brief to create a snake-based skin inspired by a jade snake pendant. The snake skin set announced yesterday was designed by our weapon concept team, independent of any knowledge or imagery of other weapon skin designs in the community. While the similarities are entirely circumstantial, we have decided not to release this weapon skin set out of respect for the artist." End quote. So, yeah, kind of a bra moment. I believe that this is a comparison between the two designs. I couldn't really find an image of what Jeter's design looked like. I think this is it, though. Gears of War 1 and 2 in Germany. In Germany, you can play Gears of War 3, Judgment, Ultimate Edition, 4, 5, and Tactics just fine. However, Gears of War 1 and 2, to this day, are still banned in the country. Kinda. This is because the USK, Germany's equivalent to the ESRB system, decided not to rate both of these games due to the amount of gore in them and the executions. So what does that mean exactly? Well, because they refuse to rate these games, Microsoft can't create a German version of either game. German game stores are also not allowed to advertise this game, and it can't be displayed openly. So you can actually own and play a copy of Gears of War 1 and 2 in Germany, but there's heavy restrictions on selling it there. Coltrane on a train. On the Gears 5 map Asylum, if you roll out of the way of both oncoming trains, not both at once, but you do have to do it for both trains. Like roll out of the way of one train, and then roll out of the way of the other train. The next train that will spawn in will have Coltrane dancing on the front of the train. And unlike the Marcus Easter egg, Cole will actually say something as he passes through. It's a pretty funny Easter egg, but it's kind of weird that Cole was not only just in the campaign, but he was also in this Easter egg at launch, but it still took months for them to add him into multiplayer? Kinda odd. Duck Hunt. In the Gears of War 3 level, House of Sand, you can find 3 different coins, or logos, I'm not actually really sure what they are, in trees outside of the playable area. If you shoot all 3 of these, some are a bit harder to see than others, so use a long shot. When you get to the area where the Locusts are stockpiling weapons and ammo, a mist will cover the area. Walking into the mist will teleport you and whoever else is playing with you to a completely new area with a mounted rocket turret. A booming Locust voice will then mock you, and then suddenly 5 Locusts will jump out into the air, and you gotta take them all out in a Duck Hunt style minigame. After this, you'll then be teleported to another room, where you'll be given a reward depending on how many Locusts you killed. If you killed 0, you get smoke grenades. If you killed 1, you'll get a snub pistol. If you killed 2, you'll get a bolt hawk. If you killed 3, you'll get a Gorgon. If you killed 4, you'll get a boom shot, and if you got all 5 of them, you'll be given a mulcher. What's crazy though about this Easter egg is that it wasn't discovered until 2016, 5 years after the game's release. Just goes to show you that there's always a chance that your favorite game has at least one undiscovered Easter egg in it.
Commando Dom. He makes the old Dom look soft. Pre-order Gears of War 3 and get the Commando Dom multiplayer character exclusively at GameStop. Power to the players. Rated M for mature.
Dancing Reject. In the Gears 5 level, The Tide Turns, when JD and crew have to go through a restaurant, if none of the rejects are alerted to your presence, and you just wait around for a bit, one of the rejects by some of the booths will begin to dance. Lenwood Hamilton. In 2017, former NFL player and pro wrestler Lenwood Hamilton filed a lawsuit against Epic Games and Microsoft for supposedly using his likeness without permission and pay. So basically, he's accusing them that they stole his likeness and mannerisms. His accusations were referring to Cole, who he claimed was based on him, and so he wanted a cut of the profits and royalties from the games that Cole appeared in. So, literally all of them, actually. So is there any evidence to support this claim? A man named Lester Spade, who worked under Hamilton at one point in time, actually tried to convince Hamilton to voice Coltrane in the games, but Lenwood Hamilton refused to be a part of the game. Now, if you're a Gears of War fan, then you'll know who Lester Spade is, as he's the voice of Coltrane. So is it possible that Lester Spade stole his former boss's mannerisms? Did Epic Games steal his likeness? Well, in 2019, the case was closed, and Hamilton lost, as the court ruled that even if Epic Games did take his mannerisms and likeness, that the use of it was transformative, and that there wasn't even enough similarities to sustain his argument. 2 years later, in February 2021, he did attempt to get the Supreme Court to revive the suit, but as of right now, nothing's come of that. Lift's Hard Hat. On the Gears of War 4 multiplayer map, Lift, if you destroy 3 different rocks outside of the map with drop shots, you can't use anything else, you have to use drop shots, a hard hat will spawn in on a table in the command room. If you walk over to the hard hat, you'll be able to pick it up and wear it for the rest of the match. Unless you die, because then it goes away for good. This Easter egg is very similar to one found on the Gears of War Judgment multiplayer map, Rig, where if you shoot off the hinges of a box containing gas masks, the box will open up and you'll be able to wear the gas masks inside. Though unlike the hard hat, if you die while wearing this, you can just go pick up another one. Side note, there should be more multiplayer maps in games taking place on like construction or oil rigs. I don't know why, but I really like the setting in multiplayer games. Invasion of Iraq. If I were to claim that Gears of War was partially inspired by the invasion of Iraq, you'd probably say that's dumb and not true. Well, there's actually some truth to this claim. A huge part of the backstory to Gears of War is the fight over emulsion, a fuel source much like oil, and how governments exploit, profit, and fight over it. Since the Iraq War began only a few years before the release of Gears of War, it's not that surprising that it influenced the game's narrative to an extent. If you want even further proof of this claim, then look no further than the original Gears of War, where you can find posters saying, "No blood for emulsion," a direct reference to the real-world no blood for oil Iraq War protests in the early 2000s. Cancelled Jace DLC. The second scrapped Gears of War 3 campaign DLC was about Jace, and would have been a prequel to the original trilogy. All we know about this cancelled DLC was that 2 of the 4 playable characters were going to be Jace and somebody named Rand, and that the story would have had these characters dealing with a Krail and Locust invasion. Most likely when this DLC was scrapped, elements of it were used in ROM Shadow. Not really much else to say outside of speculating who Rand could be. I got 2 theories. The first is Rand, an extremely minor character only mentioned on the Last Day viral website, which I'll talk about a bit later. Like Jace at the time of ROM Shadow, he was a civilian, so maybe the DLC would follow a group of civilians fighting the Locusts? My second theory is that the user who uploaded the information about the DLC simply mistyped and actually meant to say Alexandra Brand from the comics. I think this is more likely, especially since Alexandra Brand was meant to be a main character in Gears of War 3 before being replaced with Sam during early development. Regardless, this DLC never came out, so rip. A real gun. In the Gears of War 4 level, Storm Warning, you can get an Easter egg weapon known as a real gun, which is a reskin of the Lancer that fires paintballs. In order to get this weapon, you need to find a pod that's near a TV screen of Niles Sampson. If you throw a grenade to the right of the screen, you'll hear a screamer screaming. A security door will now be open, with juvies running out of it. You gotta take out these juvies and get the weapon very quickly, as if you take too long, the door will close and you'll explode. A real gun is a pretty interesting Easter egg weapon, because not only is it a paintball gun, but it also has 1,500 rounds of ammo, which is insane. Almost as insane as the idea of paintball first-person shooter games. I kinda wanna buy some of these for the novelty of owning a weird game, but I don't think it's worth it in the end. Infinity Blade 2. So Epic Games is most known for 3 franchises: Fortnite, Gears of War, and Unreal Tournament. They've also made some one-off games like Bulletstorm, Paragon, and of course the classic Jill the Jungle. However, there's actually one more franchise that they created that had 3 different main installments and 2 novels. That being the iOS RPG series Infinity Blade. Starting out in 2010, Infinity Blade got critical acclaim, and like I said earlier, got 2 different sequels and 2 novels. But that's not all. They also got an arcade machine and a Chinese Xbox One port released 5 years after the original game. Very strange. But anyways, in Infinity Blade 2, the Butcher from Gears of War is actually a guest enemy in the game. They're normally found guarding sky cages, and they're one of the only enemies in the game that actually speaks to the player. Their design is mostly the same from Gears of War, except their swords now have longer handles. Sarah is Mars. So most people agree that Sarah, the planet Gears of War takes place on, is simply an alternate universe Earth. Or like, it's the planet that human life began on instead of Earth. However, not everyone agrees with this theory, despite it being the most commonly accepted one. Some people claim that Sarah is actually the planet Mars. So what's the evidence for this? Well, if you take the name Sarah and you flip it, you get Ares, who's the god of war. And Ares was named Mars by the Romans. God of War, Gears of War. Makes sense. Kinda? Then there's some people who take this theory to the next level. These people believe that Gears of War takes place on Mars in our universe, meaning that the end point of the franchise will somehow see Sarah being wiped out in an extinction level event that turns the planet into the planet Mars that we know today. Maybe the final scene in the final game will have an Earth astronaut stumble upon a Lancer or cog tags on Mars. Hopefully not though, because that sounds dumb. Geist. Originally, the Locusts were going to be known as the Geist. Epic Games liked that name so much that there was actually talk about using Geist as the name of what would eventually become the Gears of War franchise. However, while working on Gears of War, or I guess at this point Geist, Nintendo announced the game Geist, which killed the idea for their game being called that. Maybe they could have kept Geist as the name of the enemies in the game, but honestly I'm happy they changed it to Locusts. So thank you, Geist, for existing. Without you, there'd be no Gears of War. Well, okay, no, the title Gears of War just wouldn't exist. Rom's Gift. On the Gears of War 3 multiplayer map, Bullet Marsh, if you play in Horde mode, there's a chance that a sword will spawn in the location of one of the 2 snipers or the boom shop spawn locations. This can only happen if you shoot the generator to turn off the lights near those 3 spawns. Once you do that, Krill will swarm the location for a few seconds, and will have a chance to leave behind a sword. You gotta do this 3 times to spawn the sword in each of the 3 locations. Once you get all 3, a 4th sword will spawn in the grounds by one of the sniper spawns. If you pick up that sword, you die. Krill will then swarm your body and resurrect you. Once you're up, you'll now have a Vulcan cannon, but without the ammo thingy that you have to have somebody else carrying around. Every player in the lobby will get it once you do the Easter egg, and you can do this Easter egg before even starting the Horde match, so it basically means your team is extremely overpowered. Clayton's Hollow Storm and Hivebuster skins. So in a really cool attention to detail in Gears 5, Clayton Carmine's Hollow Storm skin doesn't have his memorial tattoo for Anthony and Benjamin, but he does have Anthony's cog tags, but not Benjamin's, as, you know, Benjamin wasn't dead at the time of Operation Hollow Storm. Well, okay, no, he wasn't dead at the beginning of Hollow Storm. He didn't make it out of it. And then, as a tribute to Benjamin, Clayton's Hivebuster skin actually has Benjamin's cog tags attached to him alongside Anthony's. You could argue the Hollow Storm thing isn't really that special, but I don't know. I think it's a really cool detail that he's got Benjamin's cog tags while doing the Hivebuster stuff. Richard Prescott song. In the Gears of War 3 level, Helping Hand, right as you're about to enter the warehouse in the stranded camp, you can hear a little bit of music playing in the background, either playing from a radio or a speaker. If you wait around for a little bit, the song will eventually have lyrics being sung about how Richard Prescott, well, pretty much just sucks. Sadly, there's no more lyrics, it just repeats itself after a few seconds. The Walking Dead. In The Walking Dead Season 10, there's an episode titled, Here's Negan. That's mostly a flashback episode showing the origin of one of the show's antagonists, Negan. In the flashback, we actually see him playing Gears of War 2 multiplayer. Some think that him playing Gears of War 2 actually has meaning. As for one, while Gears of War 2 is a great game, it's kind of odd that he's playing that and not, say, like, Call of Duty or something, because that's, like, a way more popular franchise. Some people think that this actually teases what Negan is going to do to his wife by the end of the episode. As in Gears of War 2, Dom has to put down his wife after she becomes, well, basically a zombie after all the torture she goes through, while Negan puts his wife down by the end of the episode because she becomes a zombie or something. I don't know, I stopped watching The Walking Dead around the beginning of Season 6, outside of like a few scattered episodes. But she becomes a zombie in the comics, so I'm just going to assume it happens in the show too. Also, some people just assume that they chose this because you can do like brutal executions in Gears of War, and Negan's most well known for doing that to certain characters. Sarah is a colony world. So here's a minor theory about Sarah. Some claim that Sarah is actually a lost colony world, meaning that it was once a world that humanity colonized, but then over the centuries it became forgotten about, and the people of Sarah don't even remember that they're originally from Earth. This theory doesn't really have any major pieces of evidence. The only thing people point to is the people of Sarah have accents from Earth, and they all speak English. This theory is the same energy as that really unfunny joke, like, why do Princess Leia and Tarkin have British accents in Star Wars? Like guys, it's a movie or a game, like, they're not gonna create an entirely separate new language for it. That's just insane. And don't say Avatar did it, because I know Avatar did it, but, like, not everything has to be Avatar. Speaking of which, do you know how much Avatar content there is? Like, there's a lot. House of Sovereigns Ghosts. In the Gears 5 level, The Fall, you'll pass a memorial wall while going through the House of Sovereigns. There will be an option to place several different items next to that wall. These items are certain collectibles found throughout the campaign that deal with certain characters. Once you get them all and placed all the collectibles in front of the memorial wall, you'll hear the voices of several dead Gears of War characters. You'll then salute the memorial wall, and then the ghosts of Dom, Adam Phoenix, Ty, Kim, Barrick, Alicia, I know I said Alicia earlier, I'm sorry, I mispronounced that, oops, Anthony Carmine, Benjamin Carmine, and Prescott will appear. Kinda weird that Loomis and Sophia aren't included in this, since it's meant to be a wall memorializing those who died in the Locust War, and they died. Well, I guess Sophia defected, so I guess, they wouldn't really have her name on there. But, like, Loomis was known as the hero of Halvo Bay, and they really liked the reference Judgment in Gears 5, so I was kind of expecting his ghost to be there. Oh, wait, oops, he's right there on the memorial wall. And, hey, so is Will Carmine, of all characters. But, yeah, there's ghosts in Gears 5. Victorious. In the Victorious episode, Tori Gets Stuck, you can see the Gears of War logo on Jade's bag. Also, if you think this was just them using a logo that looks similar to the Gears logo, but it's like not actually the Gears logo, and this is like a whole misunderstanding, nope, she's seen with this bag in another episode. Don't really have anything else to say to this. Only noticed this when I was watching the first Quinn Reviews video about Victorious. I'm just going to assume that Epic Games, Microsoft, and the Coalition didn't know about this, or Nickelodeon just didn't know what Gears of War was. But Jade being a big Gears of War fan does make sense. Elemental Cleavers. In Gears of War 3, there's 4 different elemental variations of the cleaver, each one being on a different DLC map, only available in Horde mode. Each of these require you to do a small little Easter egg. The first is the Electric Cleaver. Available on the map Artillery, in order to get this weapon, you need to find a cleaver, head over to the headquarters, and wait around while standing on top of a high voltage sign. After a while, you'll be zapped to the extreme with lightning. This variation gives you a lightning shield that shoots out electricity every time you swing the sword, kinda like the lightning shield from The Force Unleashed. Then there's the Water Cleaver, found on the map Aftermath. In order to get this sword, you need to shoot a bird that's flying in the sky. Once you do that, if you head over to the clock tower and look off the ledge to the right, your screen will begin to shake, and suddenly a Leviathan will try to kill you. If you dodge its attack, it'll drop the Water Cleaver on the ground. This variation is constantly spewing out water, and each swing shoots water at nearby enemies, stunning them. Next, there's the Snow Cleaver, found on the map Raven Down. In order to get this variation, you must have purchased the Fire and Monument command posts, and then destroy 3 different snowmen around the map, with the last snowman being sentient and blowing up, allowing you to grab the Snow Cleaver. This variation surrounds the player in a blizzard, and stuns nearby enemies when you swing it. And finally, we have the Emulsion Cleaver. Found on the map Jacinto, in order to get this blade, you need to shoot 4 gutters above emulsion puddles around the map. After doing so, head to the Boomshot spawn. If you fire the Boomshot at the plate above the emulsion, a cleaver and stone will appear from the emulsion pool. You then gotta fire the Hammer of Dawn multiple times into the emulsion pool to create a bridge, so you can actually get the sword. This weapon covers the player in emulsion fumes, and stuns enemies with a splash of emulsion every time you swing it. The other 2 Riftworms. So you know that giant Riftworm in Gears of War 2? You know, the monster that vores you, resulting in you having to fight through its body to escape? Yeah, well, there's actually 2 more of them. We know this because of the Trinity of Worms. This is a religion in the Locust Horde. That's core belief is that the 3 Riftworms are gods, and not only created the Hollow, but also created all life in the Hollow, including my wife, Queen Mira. Oh, wait, actually, no, not actually her, because she's human, not Locust. But anyways, the only other time we've actually seen these other 2 Riftworms is in the comic series, The Rise of Rom, where Scourge is shown 3 drawings of the worms. It's unknown, and actually pretty unlikely, that the other 2 worms were ever awakened and used during the war. So are the other 2 worms still alive? I mean, maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe in Gears 6 we'll find out. Gears 4 Rideable Reaver. In the Gears of War 4 level, Remembrance, right after Kim, Anya, and Hoffman escape the fight in the street and pretty much leave you all out there to die, Reavers will eventually begin to land on the battlefield. If you act fast and shoot off one of the Beast Riders, you can run over to the now riderless Reaver. You'll then be given a prompt to interact with it. If you do interact with it, you'll be able to climb aboard, fire missiles, and control it. Dom's Beard. Alright, so I'm combining 2 Easter eggs into one entry because they both appear in Gears of War 3, and they both have something to do with Dom's beard for some reason. In the Gears of War 3 level, Prologue, if you stick by Dom throughout the entire level, like you don't leave his side for even a second, when the next level begins, every single character, regardless of sex or gender, will have Dom's beard. You can only do this on Insanity, by the way. Then, on the multiplayer map, Clock Tower, if you play the map on Horde, and you shoot all of the COG signs located in the books the statues are holding with a Boltok pistol, every single one of the statues' heads will then ignite into flames, and when the flames die down, they'll be given Dom's beard. Also, for some reason, the sun will then be given Dom's beard as well. I wasn't a Gears of War fan in 2011, but like, was Dom having a beard like a meme or something? Original Gears of War 4. Gears of War 4 wasn't always meant to be created by the Coalition. Like Bungie and Halo, Epic Games did actually have ideas for a fourth made installment. So what were these ideas? Well, their Gears 4 was also going to begin after a time skip and be about Marcus's son named JD. Even the new Locust Horde, the Swarm, was going to be in the game. In name only. According to Rod Ferguson, the former head of the Coalition, Epic Games' version of the Swarm were very different, even saying, quote, "However, the Swarm in Epic's original take was different from ours. We started talking about what the Swarm would be at Epic, but completely changed it as we developed the game on our own. The name stuck, but none of the monsters stuck." As for how they were different, he didn't actually elaborate. Epic Games' Gears of War 4 was ultimately in pre-production for 6 months before being cancelled. And in that 6 months, there was a Gears 4 engine made. But according to the Coalition, this Gears 4 engine was very mobile and PC-centric. I don't really know what that means. Sadly, that's all we know about their version of Gears of War 4. It's not much. Leviathan Easter egg. The Leviathan actually appears in 3 different Gears of War games, Gears 2, 3, and 4. This is thanks to an Easter egg in the Gears of War 4 multiplayer map, Harbor. If you look around the map, you'll find 6 Leviathan statues just outside the map. Once you shoot all 6 of the statues, a 7th statue will spawn right in front of the lever. If you then shoot the 7th statue and pull the lever, a Leviathan will jump out of the ocean. Last Day. Last Day was a viral website created to promote Gears of War 2. This website allowed you to play as Jack, as it traveled through the ruined city of Tulin. Throughout its journey, you could click on 26 different items that would give you pieces of lore, videos, audio, and pictures teasing the upcoming second installment. There was also a real-world aspect to this site, though. Epic Games planted several COG tags around several major cities around the globe for people to find. These tags had codes on them that you had to input on the website. There was even a code hidden in a page of the comic. However, because of the amount of tags hidden around the globe, there's a very good chance that not all of them were found. It might still be out there. Evil Rabbit. On the Gears of War 3 map, Cove, if you play Beast Mode and kill every single chicken on the map, the screen will suddenly turn red, and a giant evil rabbit head will emerge from a building in the middle of the map. If you then shoot out the giant rabbit's eyes, a door will open below it, and a giant egg will then roll out. This egg will then hatch, after you shoot at it a bunch, into a giant lambent chicken from the Gears of War 3 campaign. Sadly, you don't actually get anything for killing it. Disco. On the Gears of War 4 multiplayer map, Fuel Depot, if you have 10 different players on the map, you can blow up the fuel pumps by the gas station with a grenade. This will cause a computer at the back of the depot to say the word reboot. If you then interact with that computer and then get all 10 players to step on a plate outside the depot, the plates will turn into a dance floor, disco music will begin to play, and confetti will rain down on all the players. Sadly, this doesn't actually last the rest of the match. It ends only a few seconds after it starts up. Cantus are immune to the lambent. In the Gears of War games, comics, and novels, we see pretty much every single Locust variant, not including the monsters like the Hydra and stuff, turn into monstrous lambent forms. except for the Cantus. For some reason, they're the only main Locust variant to never be shown being affected by the Lambent. So this has led to theories saying that the Cantus might actually be immune to the Lambent. Now, if this is true, how are they immune? Well, it might have something to do with the emulsion fumes that Cantus are shown inhaling in the comics. They do this because they believe it gives them access to a spiritual plane that allows them to be given visions and knowledge to help the Locust army in battle. Perhaps this process somehow makes them immune. But yet again, that doesn't really make much sense, because emulsion fumes are how the Lambent spreads. Some theories suggest that the Cantus aren't even actually Locust, but instead a different species that simply works with them. So maybe that explains it? Although at the same time though we see Lambent humans in Gears of War 3, so why wouldn't the Cantus be affected by it? In reality, it's more than likely that this was just an oversight, and that both Epic Games and the Coalition just forgot to show or mention the Cantus being infected. But who knows? Maybe the Cantus are actually immune. Ghost Piano. In the Gears 5 level, Homefront, when you enter the demolished house, you can find a piano. If you go over to the left side of the piano and hit the interact button, the piano will then begin to play by itself. The song it's playing is a spooky version of Kate's theme. Locust Dragon. At E3 2005, a behind-closed-doors tech demo presentation was shown off to investors to show off the power of Unreal Engine 3. Because this was behind closed doors, this wasn't shown off to the public, but it's since been uploaded online. It's a neat little video, but the most interesting thing about it is that it showed off early Gears of War assets. In fact, this video is actually one of the main reasons why Microsoft agreed to increase the memory of the Xbox 360, which led to Microsoft spending tens of millions of dollars on it, which I talked about way earlier in the video. But this video has one more notable thing about it. The assets from Gears of War that are include one asset that was scrapped from the final game, a Locust Dragon. Sadly, there doesn't really seem to be any information about this dragon online. You'd think a scrapped Locust Dragon would be more talked about, but I can't find anything about it. Googling Gears of War Dragon only gives me this, which I don't think has anything to do with the scrapped dragon at all. Maybe this Locust Dragon was an early idea for the Reavers? Maybe an early version of the Hydra? Also, speaking of the Hydra real quick, the Hydra was actually going to appear in Gears of War Judgment at one point, but was scrapped, though you can still see it in concept art. JD hates chairs. In the Gears of War 4 level, at the doorstep, once you make it to the Tourist Information Center, you can find a bunch of chairs that you can knock over. Doing so will cause JD to scream in anger.
You done?
For now.
This Easter egg was revisited in Gears 5, in the level Shot in the Dark, where you can find more chairs and disappoint your dad.
Grow up.
The Locust Calendar. So here's a really quick one. The Locusts actually have their own calendar. However, it's based on opposites. I don't actually get it. I'm a little lost here. There's months like Drone, Queen, Cedar, Leviathan, Danger, Emulsion, and some other stuff. It's based on a sundial and is calibrated by the flow of Emulsion, so that's cool. But I don't really get the opposites thing. I can't find anything explaining that. Maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know. Resistance. Releasing the same year as the first Gears of War, Resistance Fall of Man was a first-person shooter that spawned 2 sequels, 2 spin-off games, and a comic series. While its own thing, Resistance, developed by Insomniac Games, saw a lot of comparisons to the Gears of War franchise, despite it being a first-person shooter instead of a third-person shooter, it being a PlayStation exclusive, and it dealing with alternate history instead of taking place on a different planet. The comparisons got so popular that Resistance was somewhat known as PlayStation's Gears of War. So why was it compared to Gears of War so heavily? Well, for a number of reasons actually. The first is that they are both ultra-gritty, gray military shooters, where humans fight off monstrous new species that are trying to take over the world, and humanity is on the losing side in both wars. The main enemy faction in Resistance, the Chimera, look vaguely like Locusts. For example, the main grunts of both factions, Locusts and Chimera, are both barely clothed gray monsters. Also, the Widowmakers from Resistance also kinda look like the Reavers from Gears if you squint. And finally, both Gears of War and Resistance have like a similar color scheme. They have that mid to late 2000s gray and brown military art style. But a ton of games at this time had that as well, so I think that this point is a bit unfair. Looking back at both franchises, it's clear that Gears of War was far more successful than Resistance. That's not to say that Resistance games were bad by any means. I personally can't speak too much about their quality, as I only played the demo of the first game when I was like 9, but I did nearly beat Resistance 3, but I never actually could, because for some reason my copy of the game kept crashing in the final few levels. Overall, I think that both franchises stand on their own, and I would like to see Resistance be given another installment. Maybe a reboot one day? Epic Reaper. Remember the Gears of War Judgment Ghost Easter egg from Tier 1? Yeah, well, you can actually play as that ghost. The Epic Reaper is a playable character in multiplayer that is only available for a few people. These being Epic Games employees to certain community members that were picked once a week for their contributions to the community. Not only does the Epic Reaper look cool, but he has an entirely different moveset. For example, instead of rolling, he dashes. He glides down drops, he has an extremely fast melee kill, and when he dies, krill will fly out of his body and impair the vision of any player who steps into the krill cloud. If a player is able to kill another player who's using the Epic Reaper, they'll be given an exclusive medal and a weapon skin called the Reaper Slayer. The Epic Reaper isn't the only developer-exclusive multiplayer character though. There's the Blood Moon Swarm in Gears 4 and 5, and the Coalition Soldier from Gears of War 4. But I think the Epic Reaper is probably the most unique and coolest looking out of the three. Alright guys, that was the Gears of War Iceberg. I hope you enjoyed. It's been a long wait, it's been a long time coming. Hope you enjoyed. Once again, shout out to Battlestar Kiwi on Reddit for the suggestions for the topics. This was a lot of fun to make. I really enjoyed this. But I discovered something while doing this Iceberg, and that is that Gears of War has like no presence online. It's really weird. Like there's like maybe 2 dedicated Gears of War channels out there. But like then there's like a bunch of Halo channels, Call of Duty channels, you know, Star Wars, Star Trek, etc., Marvel, DC, you know, comics. But then also like Gears of War, it's just like there's like 2 in existence and that's it. It's really weird to me. Like even like fan sites for Gears of War, they're like very rarely updated. It's really weird. Like it's a big franchise, is it not? There's 5 main installments and 2 spin-off games. Well, 3 if you count Gears Pops, but still, like, it's, you know, there's a bunch of novels and comics and stuff. It's really weird. Like, I thought Gears of War was bigger. I don't know. But, yeah, that's the Gears of War Iceberg. But yeah, that's it. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys in October.
Uh-oh! You found the toothpaste?